Hello, everyone. Nina and Michelle back. Welcome to week 2 of our master course. We hope that you're settling into the groove of our process together. And this week 2 is going to be exploring transformation. We're going to explore what that means. And as we look into diving into the exploration of transformation, we need to define the spiritual aspects of the process. What is spiritual intelligence? And we're going to look at spiritual intelligence in the context of what's happening in the world as more and more people are awakening and seeking and looking for support and guidance and answers in terms of what is awakening within them. We'll explore new qualities and the trends that we're seeing in the field of transformation. And we're going to look at the underpinnings of what supports and drives transformation, the expansion of consciousness, the science and levels, states of consciousness in the context of spiritual and personal human development. We'll look at new research in the areas of that intersect with science and spirituality. And we're going to look really deeply into understanding what are the qualities of spiritual intelligence and understanding how spiritual intelligence also fosters the other intelligences. So we're really looking forward to this week's deep dive into explorations and of the underpinnings of transformation.
Thank you so much, Nina, for that lovely introduction. So we will take a look. What is spiritual intelligence? Because it's really, as Nina was alluding to, sort of beyond or even contains other cognitive and emotional skills and intelligence. It intersects with emotional intelligence, social intelligence, conversational, relational. But it's this deeper sense, this underlying sense for us that's about meaning, about vision, about value. Purpose and passion are aspects of this spiritual intelligence of being human. Spiritual intelligence has personal benefits. It can really activate this qualities in the inner capacities of our authentic self. So again, these deeper qualities for us of wisdom, compassion, integrity, joy, love, creativity, and peace. One of the things that's written about personal intelligence that you'll discover in the resources as you go through them this week is that spiritual intelligence comes to the conclusion that therefore it represents the most powerful resource for personal and professional growth and for fulfillment. Another aspect of spiritual intelligence is that it does definitely have this social benefit. It really creates a cooperative tolerance between people, between different groups in society, between cultures. I mean, really, at this point, widespread spiritual intelligence is thought to support the heralding in of a new era of social justice and human rights, which are foundational of a shared prosperity and peace. And my goodness, could we not use more of this on our planet? And for us, those of us who are interested in this process of transformation in human development, we are really called to come forward in our roles, whether we're moms, teachers, healers, leaders, usually we're all of these, right? Practitioners, therapists. We are being asked to embody and continue to cultivate these qualities. And one more piece around spiritual intelligence that you'll find in your resources is that there is a really interesting formula that has been put together for us to consider. And that is that spiritual intelligence equals the combination of intellectual, conversational, relational, and emotional intelligence multiplied times presence. So that's a new word I want to introduce here, is this presence, because it's really the essential nature of presence is when we can shift from an ego to a soul or higher self perspective. It's a greater clarity of mind, as we're talking about here. And one of the results is that we have this ability to have much more peace and much more certainty about what's in and not in alignment with our presence. So as we utilize the perspectives, we shift from just seeing a bunch of objects in the world, right, and everything else as separate, to also having this developed subjective point of view as we develop our presence. And as we discussed earlier, it's this development of this witness consciousness, this witness perspective, the observer, the pure mirror. And through developing presence, we also continue to develop our spiritual intelligence. Well, Nina, tell us more about this topic.
Well, I especially love the introduction to the concept of presence, and it's something that we, are frequently focusing on in our practices. Be mindful meditation, becoming mindful and present in our lives, and what I love about the creation of the container for presence is it's such a beautiful and perfect construct to support our clients or to be in relationship with another, that the more present we can be, we're not constrained or restricted by the distractions that prevents us from being truly one with ourselves in this state of consciousness. And the more that we can actually be in presence, that alone opens our capacity to become more mindfully aware. And as you said, stepping into the idea of becoming a witness to and an observer. So we are able to step out of the experience, out of the emotion that we might be otherwise having, and we can step into the role of witness, which really is a really beautiful practice to support the mindfulness in the expansion of our spiritual intelligence, becoming more aware. So when there's more spaciousness, there's a greater capacity to see, a greater capacity to listen, and in the presence as our spiritual intelligence evolves, so also does our intuition. So I love the construct that accelerating transformation is really supported by and driven through the supporting of our clients, others with whom we share relationship, so that we can become more mindful, more aware, more effective, have more satisfying relationships, more satisfaction with ourselves, that we can really begin to listen, to see and witness and observe ourselves in a more objective state.
Thank you, Nina. That's very beautifully said. And the coaches, which Nina and I both are transformational coaches, the definition of presence from the International Coaching Federation says it's our ability to be fully conscious, fully awake, and to create spontaneous relationship with another, whether it's a client, employing a style that is open, flexible, and confident. Think about approaching relationships with that sense of presence. Being fully present means listening to understand and making open-ended questions to help others that we're engaged with, whether we're leaders or coaches or on a board, explore himself or herself more deeply. Now, it continues to be woven into the training and teaching that we've all been experiencing, no matter how we got here to this conversation today. The next topic we wanted to just touch on is the qualities of this old era and new era. So transformation, as Nina's already stated in the introduction, is not just an inner process, although that usually needs to occur first, and is we can impact outer transformation to the level that we've been working on our own. So what we're seeing now is a transformation in humanity, right? Transformation on the entire earth. And there are these old qualities that we are more and more aware of that are not working. They're much more in the light, they're much more transparent, and it's hard to watch, hard to be in the suffering of what has occurred in all of the secretness, right? The separation, the blame, the scarcity, greed, entitlement, power over, domination, discrimination. We have seen a world emerge, systems in our world emerge out of the old era. And those of us engaged in this conversation around transparent are the ones who maybe are a bit ahead of the curve of human development, the pioneers, right? We're on the outer edges saying, okay, what's possible? What is arising that we know we can do better? We can create systems, whether it's education or politics or healthcare, right? That are more sustainable, more transparent, that everyone wins. One of my qualities in the book around the new era is that we start making decisions in every system around going forward with ones that support cell health, biological cell health on the planet. How would that change our mindset and totally transform into a new perspective? And to really believe there is abundance, that there is common ground, right? And that we can all thrive if there's freedom and equality. We don't have to be in the old system of lack, right? And so this invitation to move into the new era in every way, in every conversation for us, to find language, to find other people who have this perspective and have this desire to be co-creating who we are becoming, is a part of this course. And we're very excited to hear about some of your own personal experiences professionally and in your personal life, to see how these qualities are emerging and which ones you're supporting. So Nina, thoughts on this topic?
Well, the new era is really presenting us with, each of us, with the opportunity to begin to reimagine and re-envision for ourselves, for our lives, for our relationships, for the world and the planet, what could be possible in this new era. So just as spiritual intelligence, calls for a greater presence of being and a stepping into the capacity to witness and to observe from a more neutral and objective perspective, but also holding within that witnessing the space for compassion and the space for understanding, perhaps the awareness of the interconnectedness of everyone and everything. And as much as we might be looking toward the new era, we realize that we are a part of creating what the new era is going to look like. And the qualities of the new era, perhaps distinguish some of the values, the intentions that really, support what we could co-create and weave into new structure, new systems, new possibilities. And while the new era isn't fully formed and it isn't yet manifested, we are here as coaches, practitioners, leaders, way showers to begin to co-create in community what that new era could look like. And so as much as our presence is called for, being present and being in this space between the old era, the new era, also presents another really interesting word that we love that we'll be exploring more deeply in subsequent weeks, but it's this word liminal, being in a liminal space, which refers to being able to be present in this space of we're not where we were, and what lies ahead is not yet realized, is not yet manifested. And so we have the unique possibility, the unique gift and potential of co-creating what it is that we intend, what we desire to see in this new human era. And I think that is just beyond compelling and exciting, maybe a little, a little scary, but we're here. We were created for these times. And if we weren't, we wouldn't be here together. So very exciting to think about how we can all serve and all play a role in co-creating a new vision for the new era.
One of the values, big values for me, both with my client work as well as my conversations with Nina, is the word patience. And to remember that we are in not a minute, but maybe a couple decades of transition here, and that patience is required, and looking like water almost, where there's an opening, where we can connect with people who are interested, where we can be moving systems along. But to understand that it's not something we can force, it has to grow. But similar to our transformation retreat here for this time that we're together, these 8 modules, we feel like it's more like a hothouse, right? It can accelerate the transformation and process, but it does still require some patience. So we've talked about levels of consciousness, and one of the invitations around transformation is to continue having access, more access to larger aspects of consciousness. And so as we look at in the book, the beginning is individual, and I'm here and everything else is other. And I mostly have to stay on, protect and defend. And my goal is to be a great citizen, have enough, contribute enough, right? Take care of my family. But it's all within the context of me against the world. And when we move into interconnected, the world changes out because our perspective changes. And now all of a sudden, we recognize that we are interconnected. And so even in our 5 senses, right, we start to have a feeling in our body around something that might be happening in a beautiful place we're walking in nature, for instance, or there might even be a tragedy on the planet, and we have this niggling feeling that something feels off, even though it's not necessarily our personal experience. So we become interconnected, the boundaries of who we are changes, the ability to have impact and create miracles and notice synchronicity, intuition, exponentially expand. And so what we have to offer in terms of service is greatly enhanced. And then we have these opportunities to fall even open further into experiencing infinite, where we have unity consciousness. And as we're talking about with soul and higher consciousness, even the object and subject disappears into one awareness. And in my worldview, it's not possible to live in that point of view 24/7. I don't know, driving down a car, I kind of like the idea of having a subject and object. And once I've had that experience where I can literally feel all the interconnectedness that we, at our heart, are one, right? The light in me salutes the light in you in our namaste, or the understanding of neutrinos, these tiny little, almost massless things that we have hundreds of thousands of them going through our every cubic inch of our body every second. Like, what is that about, right? But to move into that, then I start to make different choices in day in and day out action. And I also want to just say that at any given moment, I feel like I can be in total bliss and I can just be totally pissed off and triggered and in my stuff and working on healing my holes. So this is not a one and done experience. The goal and the invitation in transformation is to continue to elevate the stage, which is our usual place of knowing, our usual perspective, to steady on a higher stage of consciousness. Get used to that as our normal, and then continue our practice, mindful practice, as Nina was saying, our transformative practices, to continue to expand into new stages of consciousness without the judgment that at any given moment we can be in any state of consciousness. And I know we had some other models too on week one that kind of fold into this idea of levels of consciousness. So Nina, I'm going to invite you in again.
Well, I'll keep it simple, but there are other theories that Carl Jung theory of consciousness. There's integral theory, and but I was thinking about, as you were sharing and speaking, Michele, I'm thinking about the two most common states of awareness. And if we think of consciousness as states or stages of awareness, there are really two that we really float between and within, and that is consciousness and unconscious. And generally, that which is unconscious is sitting deep in the subconscious mind. And there may be triggers, or there may be an experience of, let's say, something like a dream, or being in a lucid state, or being in nature, which might be a place that you really resonate with, that suddenly consciousness expands because our senses are awakened. And so the states of awareness between conscious and unconscious, I think of it as a kind of a spectrum, and where the term unconscious represents a lack of awareness, consciousness itself can present with varying levels of awareness. And so this is what we refer to when we're talking about the state of consciousness. So I'll give you an example. Have you ever wondered why, or noticed how in the morning you feel a little more energetic? There's a little more energy, maybe initially waking up in the morning, you notice more clarity, or where you've awakened and you're very, very aware of this very vivid dream that you've had, or where you've had a hypnotic experience, which is essentially a state of awareness and a state of consciousness that takes us into a trance state. But we're actually experiencing these moments several times throughout our day. And so an example of that, which is the same state that we're in when we are in a relaxed state of hypnotic consciousness, is that where we're sitting in our car waiting for a stoplight to change, to turn from red to green. And, suddenly we're like kind of zoned out. And the next thing we know, somebody's honking their horn behind us, and we're, kind of startled, and we push the gas pedal. And that is an example of being in a trance state. It's a moment. And we experience several of these different, these moments of consciousness kind of flowing in and out. And so consciousness reflects the way that our mind is processing information, or processing our thoughts. And so in transformation, we're altering through a number of different ways, through tools, practices, mindful practice that we're working with, and we're continuously experiencing these altered states. And so another point that I would just like to touch on to what you addressed, Michele, and that is the shifting in consciousness from individual being me and I, which which can represent that capacity that we all have to feel triggered, to feel judgmental, to be pissed off, to be reactionary. And that is a level of consciousness coming from the I that is based in ego. It's based in ego. But when we're experiencing mindfulness and we're in this present state of witness and observing, judgment and ego quiets. It takes a back seat. It isn't necessary. There's nothing that we need to protect ourselves with or armor ourselves with or defend. When we're moving into the interconnected, we're moving into the space between the interconnected and the infinite levels of consciousness. We're beginning to connect with spirit, with soul. And we can experience this level of consciousness between the interconnected and the infinite as a spectrum within and between the spaces of consciousness. And so we are continuously like floating between, from within and through the levels of consciousness. But as we continue in this transformational inner journey, as we evolve, we move more and more into the interconnected. And then we're supported in being able to experience that complete soul consciousness connection to the infinite. Michele and I experience that when we're in a state of complete presence and in a complete state of soul connected communication, where things just channel through for us. Intuition, telepathy, whatever we want to call it, there's an open, like a quantum field. We enter a unified field, and where we don't have to think, we don't have to figure it out. It just flows naturally. And so we're going to have the opportunity to experience practices that are going to support us in working with and playing with our levels of consciousness.
Thank you, Nina. That's perfect. There's two more thoughts on consciousness from an Indian man named Nassim, who is just brilliant and is in part of your resources. Looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking in the radio for the announcer, right? So again, the mind, this field, this morphic field that Nina's talking about, that's where consciousness lives. He also says, in regard to consciousness, he regards it as fundamental, and he regards matter as a derivative from consciousness, right? This field. We cannot get behind consciousness because everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, literally postulates from consciousness. It's a neat concept and a way for us in our community to have some common language. We've talked a bit already about this whole idea that all of these intelligences are interrelated and continue to develop. We also wanted, our last topic of the day today is this constant weaving of spirituality and science. Because there are fields in science, which we've spoken about, quantum physics, neuroscience, psychology, all kinds of studies on consciousness. And the world of spirituality continue to be much more inextricably intertwined. What we're really seeing is that modern day science, especially with these various types of science listed here, are kind of catching up, right, to the ancient mysticism and concepts that have been deeply ingrained in spirituality in cultures throughout written history and probably long before that. So it's such an amazing thing to be able to now measure some of the energy from scientifically that we've known about in the spiritual world, from yoga to breath work to meditation, right? And some of the Dalai Lama and Richie Davidson's research around gray matter being built, and literally the amygdala itself settling down with meditation. So we'll continue. We have a number of different articles in your resources this week around this dance and play of spirituality and science that is becoming much more one and the same now that we as humanity have simply developed the tools to measure what the ancient teachers have been telling us all along. So if you want to finish us off here, Lina, with any of your words of wisdom before we close out, that would be awesome.
Well, just something that we've discovered in our research and that I've stumbled across, that is that there is among the circles of leadership in large corporations and organizations, there's a growing recognition that we are entering a new era. And with that means flattening of organizations and a streamlining of how people work. The pandemic has resulted in millions of people around the world working now remotely from home. So the world of work, the world of management and of leadership is changing. And the one thing that's really remarkable is that many leaders in organizations are beginning to recognize that spiritual intelligence is ultimately being viewed as a key to provide new answers and new solutions for how organizations can move, evolve, and transition sustainably into this new era. And of course, organizations aren't entities. They're just compilations of, groups of individuals, groups of humans. And so, of course, it only makes sense that that the scope of leadership begins to embrace the recognition that it all is going to success is going to stem from leadership, and leadership in the next decade and beyond in this new era is going to be inextricably woven and interconnected with expanding consciousness, accelerating human development, and supporting people in the realm of spiritual intelligence, which as we evolve and as we emerge, we're going to begin to manifest differently in the world with new possibilities, new creative approaches and solutions to the challenges that we're facing on the planet and moving forward. So looking forward to seeing you live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina. We'll be seeing you live very shortly.